Seeking an easy target, two motorcycles from Shadow Wolves rode into a peaceful petrol station. A hero of the Vietnam War was instead located. The events that followed would reveal a web of corruption, bust a $100 million trafficking ring, and deliver a severe lesson to the state's most notorious motorcycle gang. The unassuming old man filling up his 1967 Mustang can be the most deadly person at the gas station at times. For whatever reason, they felt the need to frighten an elderly man. They chose to engage in combat instead, engaging one of the most decorated intelligence officers in the history of the Vietnam War. The story begins with a couple of conceited bikers who, at a gas station, provoked the last war hero. What followed was the largest takedown of organized crime in the state, all because of their moment of hubris. Please inform us of your location before we resume. I have something really amazing in store for you tomorrow, so be sure to subscribe if this tale resonates with you. At the Ravens Hollow gas station, William Hunter filled up his immaculately kept 1967 Ford Mustang under the long shadows cast by the autumn sun. The late afternoon sun reflected off the purple heart pin on his collar, a subtle symbol of the sacrifices that have been made in the past. William, who was 72 years old, exhibited the deliberate accuracy of someone who had retained his military training despite the passage of time. A pot of freshly brewed coffee was brought out by Catherine Morgan, better known as Elizabeth, from the station's gift store. Over the past 5 years, she had transformed the once dilapidated rest station into a welcoming gathering spot for truckers and residents, providing them with warm coffee and friendly faces. William, as usual. As she reached for his cup, Elizabeth inquired. "No, you know me all too well," William said, a small grin playing across his wrinkled face. 3 motorbikes roared into the station, their noise overpowering that of an old couple's car horn as they swerved to avoid them, shattering the tranquil atmosphere. The motorcycles drew to a halt, their menacing formation obstructing not one but 2 parking spots. With an air of calculated superiority, their mounts dismounted from their black leather jackets that bore the insignia of a coiled scorpion. Blade, aka Tyler Rhodes, took off his helmet to show off the intricate tattoos that snaked up his neck. Michael, the Russian Russo, and Drake Matthews, his buddy, flanked him like attack dogs. Well, Tyler said, his voice resonating around the parking lot. "Observe this, young men, we uncovered a genuine piece of American pie." William proceeded to fill up his tank in a slow and methodical manner. While keeping her composure, Elizabeth clenched her muscles a little. With a steady tone, she welcomed us to Ravens Hollow. "How may I be of service to you?" A chilly chuckle escaped Tyler's lips. It was like taking a trip down memory lane, it was adorable, complete with all the trimmings. With a hungry eye, Drake and Russo inspected the station, their boots crunching on the gravel. With a subtle click, William replaced the gasoline nozzle, his keen eyes catching every detail. Calling out to Grandpa, Tyler sauntering toward William shouted. "How exciting! I suppose that was all the rage when you were a kid." "The '67 Mustang still runs beautifully," William quietly remarked. While running his finger along the shiny hood of the automobile, Tyler made the suggestion that it could look better in his garage. William carefully pivoted to face Tyler head-on for the very first time. The younger man paused, something in his eyes, but he smirked it away fast. William softly said to his son, "I've seen your type before. Men, you're merely acting out your bad boy fantasies by dressing in leather and patches." Tyler's grin turned into a growl. "Old-timer, you should be careful what you say. In Vietnam, I battled with some truly evil men," William said calmly. "Individuals whose mere gaze could elicit an intimate response from you. This is your last warning, go elsewhere to conduct business." Drake produced a switchblade and opened it with the deft touch of an expert. It would be wise to show Gramps here some respect, perhaps. Unnoticed by everyone were Elizabeth's stealthy button presses beneath the counter and the little camera atop the entrance, its red light continually blinking. Without even looking at the knife, William commanded that it be put away. "Tyler, his rage evident in his hot breath, inched closer before you made a fool of yourself. Wow, you're rather courageous, sir. Do you have any idea who we are? As for William, he had no trouble identifying the person. That's why I'm allowing you to depart. With his blade gleaming in the sunlight, Drake surged forward. Impressively quick on his feet, William swiftly grasped Drake's wrist with a firm grasp perfected through years of martial arts training. Drake was gasping for air as the knife clattered to the floor as he twisted it. That's sufficient, Tyler yelled, his voice suddenly betraying his doubt. After William let go of Drake, the latter retreated while holding onto his wrist. As I mentioned before, you're acting like bad guys. Only very evil men would be foolish to cause problems here. Nobody dared to look away as they heard the rumble of a truck driving up. The station manager, Pete Davidson, was making his way back from his supply run. With their self-assurance dwindling, the motorcyclists glanced at each other. Even though Tyler's eyes were betraying his anxiety, he still kept his sneer and retreated. The Shadow Wolves are not disrespected by this old man. If you don't want to find out how deep you're in trouble, William replied firmly, it's over. The motorcyclists got on their bikes and started revving their engines. With her hands slightly trembling, Elizabeth approached William as they sped away. Are you okay? Quietly, she inquired. In his seat, William watched as the road's dust settled and nodded. They're coming back. Are the cops going to come get us? William confirmed with narrowed brows that it was not yet. Some aspect of theirs seems off. By their demeanor and the patches they're sporting, they're part of a greater whole. Can you explain? I was an intelligence analyst in Vietnam. Patterns and linkages were made clear to you. Those motorcyclists weren't simply pretending to be tough. They are enlisted men serving in the army of another. The security camera, whose red light was still blinking, caught Elizabeth's eye. At least we recorded it all. William faintly grinned. I sense this is only the start, so that's good. They had no idea that his prediction would come true or that this seemingly insignificant altercation would cause such a seismic shift in their peaceful town as the sun dipped below the horizon over the Ravens Hollow gas station. With a look of genuine worry on his face, Pete Davidson quickly parked his delivery truck and raced over to join William and Elizabeth. Those motorcycles were about to depart when I passed by. Were those wolves made of shadow? Is everything okay with you too? Pete, we're all right. Even when she poured him a cup of freshly brewed coffee, Elizabeth's hands remained slightly trembling, but she assured him. William sat at the bar, his composed demeanor standing in sharp contrast to the palpable stress. Not your run-of-the-mill pranksters. The patches they were sporting were excessively fresh and homogeneous. They're being funded by someone. Can you explain? A stool was placed next to William as Pete slid into it and requested. When I was in Vietnam, I kept tabs on supply lines and gang activity. After a while, you start to recognize the signals. These men aren't your average neighborhood gang. Well organized and financially supported. With her voice lowered, Elizabeth leaned across the counter. Are we to be concerned? William said, not yet, his expression reflecting his fading recollection. But we need to exercise caution. Some additional security cameras, particularly in the rear, could be a good idea, Pete. Coming out of the inventory room was the youthful attendant, Lisa Carter. Those motorcyclists, Ms. Morgan, have been around this corner, haven't they? Elizabeth slowly nodded. I was just driving through last week, taking it all in. At that time, I didn't give it any consideration. William whispered softly that they are scouts. Evaluating answers, searching for flaws. If I could go back in time, I would have done the same thing. In the past, Lisa inquired, her curiosity triumphing over her dread. On his collar, William felt the Purple Heart pin. Section of Intelligence for the Special Forces. The enemy's whereabouts, supply routes, and criminal networks that were supplying them with funds for their operations were all monitored. With a low whistle, Pete signaled. Your handling of them was commendable. However, why is it located here? Which station is better than ours? After retrieving a little notebook, William responded with the location. With 50 miles of highway ahead of you, you are the last destination. Distribution in the ideal location. There was a palpable weight to the word. What is the distribution of? Despite her expression indicating that she was previously aware, Elizabeth inquired. Probably drugs, maybe weapons, but whatever it is, they're transferring it. The shadow wolves represent a fresh currency. Somebody is putting them up there for show. As a state trooper stepped inside, the doorbell rang. Police Officer Martinez was a nightly fixture, popping in for coffee and chat. Good evening, everyone. He hesitated, sensing the tense atmosphere. Is everything okay? Just as Elizabeth was about to speak, William glanced over at her and gave her a small head shake. Just fine, officer, she retorted. As usual. William watched Martinez intently while he awaited his coffee. While reaching for his drink, the officer's hand quivered slightly, and his gaze flitted restlessly to the surveillance cameras. Turning to Elizabeth, William waited for Martinez to depart. He is not trustworthy. His reaction upon seeing the cameras was priceless, wasn't it? Feeling anxious. Jack. While Elizabeth was protesting, she pointed out that he had been coming here for years. Very much so. And he's keeping an eye on the area for them. Most likely, it has been for some time. Lisa's pupils dilated. Do you really believe he's doing something? Is this a typical small town? They should contact the police. Relationships would be nurtured years in advance, which makes sense. Pete combed his fingers through his locks. So now what? Right now, nothing. William rose to his feet and spoke. Pretend like nothing is wrong. Copy that security footage, Elizabeth. One pair can stay here, and the other can be mine. Furthermore, you should not disclose your possession to anyone. Elizabeth trailed behind William as he went to get his Mustang. Just a moment, William. Tell me why you're assisting us. One option is to simply depart. He glanced back at the station and waited. Simply said, I left a Vietnamese village 30 years ago. Ignored a problem although knowing it was incorrect. That was the last time. It took us a long time to prepare and tell this narrative. Therefore, please subscribe to our channel if you find it enjoyable. We are deeply grateful. We will return to the story now. In the distance, the sound of motorbikes rumbled. Keep an eye on them. William, he whispered. It has likely been going on all day. Elizabeth, please enter. End the night on a high note. Stay vigilant and do not put your faith in someone who is not a part of this station. Even after William drove away, the uneasy thought that her peaceful existence as a gas station owner was going to take a dark turn persisted in Elizabeth's mind. Lisa anxiously peered out the window while Pete placed an order for more security gear over the phone. The black SUV parked across the street and the woman inside were photographing everyone who came and went from the station, but nobody paid any attention to either of them. The Shadow Wolves have been under FBI agent Maria Ramirez's surveillance for months. At last, she had some noteworthy news to share. An intelligence professional and Vietnam War veteran. She may finally get her break now. As the sun dipped below the horizon at the Ravens Hollow service station, a bigger picture was beginning to take shape. Unbeknownst to them, the bikers had unwittingly set in motion circumstances that would reveal decades of unlawful activity and corruption when their attempt at intimidation failed. For the time being, though, as night fell, all they could hear was the faint beep of surveillance cameras, the buzz of fluorescent lights, and the increasing knowledge that tomorrow would come problems knocking again. Over Ravens Hollow, a chilly and overcast morning greeted the coming day. William Hunter parked his Mustang in a spot that allowed him to see the entrance to the station as well as the highway. He had gotten to the petrol station earlier than normal. Inside, Elizabeth and Pete were already going over yesterday's security footage. "Check this out," Elizabeth said as she gestured toward the television. They weren't winging it with the placement of their motorcycles. William peered closer, analyzing the video. The security camera couldn't see the highway because of them. Skilled relocation. All of these men have served in the military. Military? Pete inquired, bewildered. "I assumed they were merely criminals." William responded, "Thugs don't move like that," and the camera froze. "Take a look at Drake's knife-handling skills. And that special operations strategy. Someone is using former service members in their operation." A jingle sounded from the doorbell. Lisa rushed in, her cheeks flushing. "They've returned. Off to one side of the street are 3 bicycles." William went over to the window. As expected, Russo, Drake, and Tyler were perched on their motorbikes, intently observing the station. On this occasion, they had company. There was a black pickup truck parked close by. Within are 2 additional shadow wolves. According to William, they're becoming more daring. "Elizabeth, that second tape from yesterday, where is it? Could you maybe fit my office safe there?" "Well, then, leave it as is." William glanced across at Pete. "Those brand new security cameras?" Once again, Pete gave the signal. "These were installed yesterday night. The rear lot is now completely covered." Motorcyclists' low rumbles intensified as they crossed the street and drew up to the station. With a more obvious swagger than yesterday, Tyler dismounted first. "Long for our presence?" As he strode near the entrance, he yelled out. With an air of casual readiness, William took a seat near the counter. While Pete stepped nearer to the phone, Elizabeth remained steadfast behind the register. Drake and Russo trailed behind Tyler as they pushed through the door. The cheery chiming of the bell seemed strangely inappropriate. "Well," Tyler scowled, "if it wasn't our beloved war hero. Our chat yesterday has been on my mind. Pretty basically nothing to consider." "No worries," William said. "Unless, of course, you're paying guests." Even though he had recovered from yesterday's incident, Drake's wrist was noticeably swollen as he advanced. "You were fortunate, sir. There will be no repeat of that." William stated with a low voice that luck had no role in the matter. "The fact that your companions in the pickup truck are secretly armed is also no accident." A little crack appeared in Tyler's grin. "You've been keeping tabs on us." "As if you've been keeping tabs on this spot for weeks, hasn't he?" "Noting shift changes, delivery timetables, and police patrols. For a hero at a petrol station, that's very astute." Russo protested. His mocking Russian accent was thick. "Intelligent enough to realize that yesterday isn't the true reason you're here. Do you not consider this station to be crucial to your operation? Positioned strategically. Normal foot traffic. The ideal packaging for transporting goods." Tyler's expression pivoted. "What you're saying is completely incorrect." "No, I do. Take a look. Officer Martinez is on staff to keep an eye on things. Most likely, other stations along the highway will have comparable setups. It's an excellent method. Until the light bulb goes off." "Old man, are you threatening us?" Angrily, Drake let forth a sound. William faintly grinned. "Just chit-chatting. Since you are here, though, I will tell you something that I picked up in Vietnam. Corruption is a problem because it leaves evidence. Financial documents, cellular data, surveillance video. It is remarkable what a vigilant observer could discern." His statements were blatantly menacing. As he reached for his jacket, Tyler's hand quivered. William's unwavering stare, nevertheless, silenced him. "There's more to come." As he retreated toward the exit, Tyler spoke. "Well, we certainly are." "William," the man responded. "Tell your boss, Tyler, that bringing in former soldiers could be a wise move. Nevertheless, there is a negative aspect to it. Our own tends to stand out. The motorcyclists withdrew. Their confidence waned. Elizabeth gasped for air as they roared away. It was obvious they were armed, she remarked. Just how? Their movements. Military habit. When you're carrying, you need to change your stance. Moreover, they have validated all of my suspicions. By escaping? Pete, the questioner inquired. As a result of your response to my remarks against Martinez. In relation to their business. More than that, they are crooks. They are fighting in a war that does not concern them. And we have discovered their vulnerability. After standing silently by the stock room, Lisa finally spoke something. Which area of vulnerability? Yes, William remarked. They were once in the military. We were once the hardest men in the room. Feeling humiliated by a senior citizen. It will cause them to be careless. Motivate them to seek validation. A black SUV on the other side of the roadway began to rev its engine. Through the directional microphone, Agent Ramirez had picked in on every detail, and William's findings were in perfect accord with her own inquiry. But she was troubled by something. His response to the problem. Got a feel for how they felt. It was as if he sensed her attentiveness. William, who was inside the station, saw the SUV drive away. We were watched. Subtly, he spoke. Federal. Seems like the FBI is working on a case. What are the signs? Elizabeth, could you please ask? For the simple reason that it is my exact course of action. Facing them, he pivoted around. Complicating matters more is inevitable. That group of motorcyclists will return. And they won't be alone themselves the next time. Ready or not, we must be. When will we be ready? Nervously, Pete inquired. When they discovered that this peaceful gas station was going to turn into their worst fear. Storm clouds were gathering on the horizon, but the security cameras kept their silent watch. The Shadow Wolves were due to report to their actual boss in just a few hours. On top of that, the stakes in this little town confrontation would increase significantly. For the time being, though, the sole sound was that of the fluorescent light's low hum. There was also an increasing sense of certainty that the following confrontation would be far more perilous. Out in the other side of town, in a derelict warehouse, Tyler finally faced his boss, the ex-military colonel turned mob boss Marcus Bishop. Seated behind an improvised desk was Bishop. The dusty setting ruined his pricey suit. Please explain this to me. Even though he spoke softly, Bishop's voice still carried the sharpness that had frightened Afghan warriors. It seems like an elderly man outwitted you at the petrol station. As Tyler pointed out, he's not your average elderly guy. He has a background in the military, specifically the special forces. Our operation is known to him. Bishop widened his gaze. Who is to blame for that, anyway? Our presence there was to be discreetly established by you. You let your pride to stand in the way instead. Not a problem for us. Drake was adamant. Please, let's return with additional mails. Quiet down. Bishop rose to his feet, his towering stature illuminating the entire room. One of our critical distribution locations has already been compromised by you. A former member of the Special Forces is now keeping a close eye on us. According to Russo, he brought up Vietnam. Branch of intelligence. A halt came over Bishop. Intelligence. Can you repeat what he said? Somewhere in the vicinity of keeping tabs on operations and supply chains. He was aware of Martinez and our monitoring. A gentle grin crept over Bishop's countenance. John Hunter. No way else. His story has been told to me. In the world of intelligence, this man was legendary. So now what? What do you think? Tyler inquired. Revised agenda. We can't afford to lose that gas station. By week's end, we must have a definitive answer. Plus Hunter. He has suddenly become our first concern. William was demonstrating to Elizabeth how to recognize surveillance cars back at the station. Is that a white van? Still sitting there after 3 hours. Not dirty enough to be a labor van. Window tinting. Remove all logos. Elizabeth peered through the narrow window. Who needs more shadow wolves anyway? No. Total change of pace. Their focus is on those who observe. Can you explain? The FBI agent in the SUV earlier has support. As they collect evidence, they are constructing a case. The catch is, there are others who are keeping tabs as well. Along came Pete, who was bringing new coffee. Do you really believe Bishop is unaware of the FBI? An eyebrow was arched by William. Are you familiar with Bishop? The name Marcus Bishop is well known. Pete whispered something. A former soldier now controls half of the county. Without his consent, nothing can pass through this place. William pondered. Is his name Marcus Bishop? The 75th Regiment of Rangers? Does he know you? Not at all. There were some dubious operations in Afghanistan in which his battalion participated. In a flash, the man went from being a highly esteemed officer to a discredited veteran. That operation was so meticulously planned by the military is now clear to me. As Lisa hurried back after her break, the bell rang. Excuse me, Ms. Morgan. Across the street in the diner, there are a few suit-clad males who are asking questions. William went over to the window. Federal officials. Beginning with neighborhood establishments, they are charting the network. Are we to approach them? Elizabeth, could you please ask? No, not just yet. There will be a lot of eyes on Bishop. We must use caution in this matter. Entering the parking lot was a police cruiser. Once again, Officer Martinez. He stepped out while William watched. He seems more clumsy than normal. According to William, he's somewhat anxious. He was probably instructed by Bishop to step up monitoring. Martinez stepped inside. He was holding his firearm with one hand. Evening everyone. Just checking things out. Mr. Coffee. The offer was made by Elizabeth. Going about their daily business as usual. Today is not the day. The safety of everything is my utmost concern. Martinez and William locked eyes. Extremely safe, officer. We have improved our camera system. There is now excellent coverage. Retains all objects. A frown crept over Martinez's face. Very encouraging. Continue to be cautious. Swiftly, he departed. As he made his way to his vehicle, he spoke into his radio. William mentioned that he is answering to someone. Bishop is becoming very tense. How do we proceed from here? Elizabeth, could you please ask? We are patient. Allow them to make the subsequent error. Currently, Bishop's operation resembles a web spun by spiders. Caress a single thread. It trembles all around. Patience is required of us. Motorbikes roared out into the distance. Who needs more shadow wolves anyway? Concerned, Lisa inquired. Then William shook his head in disapproval. No. A variety of engine noises. Here we have Harleys. Veteran motorcyclists are being dispatched by Bishop. Law enforcement officers with expertise in this area. On the distant horizon, 3 motorbikes materialized. The riders of each team wear unique patches. A military insignia adorned red skull. Hi, Elizabeth. William, he whispered. Please have Lisa go to the rear. Hi, Pete. Do you recall the video I showed you involving the cameras? We need to know how much Bishop is willing to risk now. In the parking lot, the Harleys rolled up. Their engines sounded menacingly. In a manner reminiscent of the military, the riders dismounted. Every step counts. The shadow wolves lacked showboating. According to William, who was fiddling with his purple heart pin, this is when things start to heat up. The front rider took off his helmet, exposing a face scarred by battle. Upon seeing him, William knew it was him. The head enforcer for Bishop is Samuel Shade Wilson, a former Delta Force agent. Now we must determine the true depth of this rabbit hole. Once again, the bell rung, and William mumbled something. After years of building tension, the quiet gas station was poised to explode into a violent conflict, and the true players revealed their hands. On this occasion, though, Bishop's guys weren't up against a business owner from a small town. This man had spent his entire life learning the ins and outs of criminal empires and how to bring them crashing down. Entering the station with the confidence of an emperor, Samuel Shade Wilson was accompanied by two equally commanding men. As a jab at their military service, the patches that adorned their leather jackets have been transformed into gang patches. Shade addressed William Hunter with a gravelly voice that betrayed his long history of combat. So long ago. William remained rooted to the spot by the counter. During Desert Storm 91, I was collecting intelligence and you were conducting special operations. A sharp mind in his twilight years. Sufficient to recall the reason they referred to you as Shade. Completely undetected, 10 confirmed deaths in a single night. A contorted expression resembled a smile on Shade's damaged face. Apparently, you were sharp, according to Bishop. I guess he had a point. Although he was still sheltering behind better men, William whispered something. Unlike me, you are unfamiliar with him. A guy can see. A scoff from William. As he runs a narcotics business utilizing veterans as muscle, he brings shame to the uniform. The allies of Shade changed their position. Mild maneuvers made to prepare for battle that caught William's eye. Hunter, be careful. Mutual respect is essential. William took the lead. Does the topic of respect interest you? Examine your patches. Individual medals. Men gave their lives for those. These days, you can't help but wear them when you're protecting a criminal. The expression on Shade's face turned shadowy. I don't think you comprehend what Bishop is constructing. Forget about the cash. We are building something more substantial. I get it completely. For veterans who believe the system has abandoned them, Bishop is a lifeline. Gives them a sense of direction, a sense of belonging, and financial support. Identical strategies employed by terrorist organizations to enlist new members. In this way, we tend to our own. Gigantus squawked. By transforming them into lawbreakers. The ones you're utilizing, the shadow wolves. Newly returned young service members from the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Everything they battled for is being tainted by you. While Shade was being purposefully pushed, Elizabeth calmly observed the exchange. Pete had advanced toward the soundless security system. From the safety of the stockroom door, Lisa anxiously glanced. Shade, you're engaged in the wrong conflict. William proceeded. Like he does with Martinez, Bishop is taking advantage of you. He takes advantage of everyone. One final word, Hunter. Take a step back. For the operation to run well, this station is crucial. This doesn't need to be done the hard way. William faintly grinned. The arduous route? Just as in Kuwait. When a group of intelligence operatives had to come to the aid of your unit after it was cornered. William was prepared, but Shade moved at an explosive pace. He evaded the blow and sent Shade falling into a display rack by capitalizing on his momentum. Am I still giving away your next move? Quietly, William spoke. William's voice prevented Shade's allies from reaching for firearms. Not me. Every single person who walks into this station has been photographed by those FBI officers over there. Moreover, all activity is being streamed to a secure server by Elizabeth's new cameras. Shade stood up straight. his fury being overshadowed by his military training. "Hunter, we are not over yet." "Yes, that's correct. I am aware of the shipments, inform Bishop of this. In relation to the entire procedure. With just one phone call, his entire world comes crashing down. This is a bluff. Do I interrogate him regarding Operation Sandstorm? Regarding the true fate of those misplaced goods from 1991? Shade, I wasn't merely collecting intelligence at the time. Creating files was my task." Whiteness spread over Shade's face. "Just how?" "Yes, I am as per your description. You must now vacate my premises." With that, the trio withdrew. Their composed manner shifted. As their Harleys sped off, Elizabeth looked over at William. "Are you familiar with Bishop in any way? A massive undertaking." I nodded. "William. There is more to Bishop's enterprise than just narcotics. Weapons are the subject. Bases are losing high-quality military hardware. Ending up in the hands of criminals. Has persisted for a long time. Additionally, are you able to provide evidence of it? During Desert Storm, I have evidence that Bishop was a part of comparable actions. This game has been run by humans for decades. The reason the FBI is keeping tabs on Pete knew it. On a partial level. Yet the broader view eludes them. It's not only because Bishop is a criminal. He is amassing a garrison. Including soldiers who have experienced system betrayal. Using their abilities to his win. Our next move is unclear." Lisa inquired. "Making their way out of the warehouse. We are patient. Shade is going to inform Bishop. Things are going to get worse fast after that." "You provoked him for what reason?" "Elizabeth, could you please ask?" Iran being brought up. William beamed a gloomy grin. "This has proven to Bishop that I am more than simply an elderly man who struck it rich with his shadow wolves. To him, I represent an actual danger. Threats are too much for men like Bishop. Incompetence sets in. His pride is being used against him by you." "Pete," she said. "A realization is emerging. A lesson learned from Vietnam. Sometimes it's better to let an adversary die than to try to stop him." As Shade departed, the FBI surveillance crew captured the moment on camera. Subtly, Agent Ramirez communicated through her radio. "There has been a change at target. The weaponry angle has been validated by Hunter, sir. We underestimated the size of Bishop's enterprise. Things were starting to fall into place, but the true battle had only just started. This challenge wouldn't be taken lying down by Bishop. The following move, William realized, would be the deciding one. A 30-year-old feud had escalated into a full-scale war at the once quiet petrol station. The final combat hero, William Hunter, was prepared to complete the mission that had begun in the desert long ago. Even though Shade had been fighting for years, he flinched as Marcus Bishop pounded on the desk. "He is familiar with Sandstorm. Do you have no doubts whatsoever? He was, in fact, creating files at the time, as you correctly mentioned, sir. Financial protection." As he paced the warehouse office, Bishop's pricey sneakers kicked up dust. Intelligence wasn't all Hunter possessed. He was an expert in counter-operations, with a focus on breaking up criminal networks within the armed forces. "What do we do next?" Tyler leaned over in his corner and inquired. Death loomed large above the Shadow Wolves' commander, making him appear little. "This evening, we silenced him." Bishop looked over at Shade. "Raid your finest warriors. Turn it become a heist gone wrong." "Excuse me." Shade was hesitant. "Hunter has company. There is a lot of FBI surveillance, and he has cameras set up all over the place. First things first, remove the cameras. Put out the light. Disorient people." The authoritative commanding tone of Bishop's voice echoed his time in the military. Before midnight, I want Hunter out of there and that station dark. William, meantime, was instructing Pete and Elizabeth at the gas station in the art of detecting surveillance patterns. You can see that blue car going in a circle. Traditional method of counter-surveillance enforcement. As the FBI watches us, they're keeping tabs on us. Is there a certain number of teams? Elizabeth, could you please ask? Astounded by the intricate scene unfolding on their peaceful street. More than one. William, Bishop's men, and the FBI all took a moment to observe a car in the distance. It was revealed by someone. Armor plates. Unidentified vehicle. Law enforcement officers in the military. Pete proposed. No, it's not that. Higher-ups must have noticed Bishop's operation. Quickly, Lisa returned from taking out the trash. Good day, Mr. Hunter. Behind the diner, I caught a glimpse of Tyler meeting with several intimidating-looking men in those shadow wolves. Working together. William barely spoke. Bishop is becoming increasingly frantic. What makes it so desperate? Elizabeth, could you please ask? I brought up the subject of Sandstorm because present actions are only part of it. What transpired 30 years ago is the subject. The foundation of Bishop's kingdom rests on the secrets of Desert Storm. Everyone leaped when the phone rang. Elizabeth responded, her complexion turning white. William, this is for you. I say, he reveals. A long-time acquaintance of his from Kuwait, he claims. William answered the call. Hello, William. Bishop had an authoritative voice that betrayed his decades of service. Something needs to be said between us. Marcus, there is no need to speak. A war that lasted for 30 years is currently being fought by you. I'm working on a significant project. Finally, the system gave men a reason to live. Look at you, taking advantage of those people. Making use of their abilities to expand your criminal empire. Bishop laughed with an icy tone. Syndicate of criminals. Something is coming together, and it's order. Structure. Something these guys get. Through the use of illicit substances. Arms that are stolen. Hey, Marcus, that's not orders. That's pandemonium dressed squarely. Just one more opportunity, William. Exit the room. The files you were referring to? A long and storied past. William firmly stated no. Their health coverage. Plus, you have a firm grasp on the contents. Then you force me to make a decision. Bishop's voice became more stiff. Do you recall Basra? At times, triumph requires the shadows. There was no response. William gazed across to his companions. Look at the backup generators, Pete. Elizabeth, please ensure Lisa's safety. Tonight, they will arrive. What was his intention regarding Basra? Elizabeth, could you please ask? Here's a word of caution. They turn off entire areas in Basra before big operations. William went over to the window. They will endeavor to render us unconscious. Disorient people. Are the cops going to come get us? Pete, the questioner inquired. Grasping the handset. They have been deceived. Bishop employs more than just Martinez. The time was checked by William. About 2 hours remain till the sun goes down. They'll take action at that point. What's going on? Although she was terrified, Elizabeth kept her voice calm. Let them come, we did. However, we are prepared this time. William retrieved his phone and dialed a number that had slipped his mind for quite some time. There are others like us. It was a known voice that answered. So long ago. Do you still have the favor from Riyadh that you owe me? I am ready to gather. David Thompson, a CIA agent, glanced to Agent Ramirez across town as he put down his phone. Enter Connors. Several operations back. Something the bishop's empire had never faced before was about to happen. A multi-agency approach spearheaded by an expert who has spent his career dissecting criminal dynasties. William observed the gathering of Bishop's forces in the shadows as the sun started to fall. A conflict that had simmered for 30 years was about to break out at the peaceful gas station. Even the final battle hero had allies this time. As William Hunter made his last arrangements, night fell over Raven's Hollow. He had Pete stationed close to the controls of the backup generator and sent Lisa home. Elizabeth was adamant about staying in her office and watching the security feeds. William mentioned 3 groups, each noting their location on a map of the station. Veteran shades in the northern section. Towards the south, shadow wolves. Security of Bishop in those dark SUVs across the street. Are they seriously planning to assault a petrol station? As she watched the shadows shift on the security monitor, Elizabeth inquired. Bishop intends to convey more than just an assault. Demonstrate to everyone what happens to those who defy him. Once more, the phone rang. Time and again, it was Thompson. Hey Hunter, we're making progress. All of Bishop's operators have been summoned. On the order of 30 men. Very well, William said. Even more people saw his demise. Do you have any doubts? It would be possible for us to move in simultaneously. Keep the station safe. No, Bishop should reveal his hand. Establish the link between his ongoing mission and Desert Storm. Or are you certain that he will? His obligation is to do so. The ones I brought up earlier. None of that exists. When Elizabeth heard this, her mouth dropped open in shock. Is it a tactic? Thompson inquired. That is unknown to Bishop. Because of his shame, he will take measures to eliminate an imaginary danger. He will be with us at that point. At 9:47 p.m., everyone began to notice the assault. After the streetlights went out, the electricity went out to the buildings in the area. However, Pete was prepared when they attempted to disconnect power to the station. Without delay, the backup generators began operating. Coldly, William predicted that their next move would be to disrupt communications. A conventional strategy. It was only a matter of moments until cell phone reception dropped. Still, the telephone, which was connected to an antiquated copper network, continued to function. Whispers of Shade's voice echoed through the room. So, Hunter, this is your final opportunity to let go. You were never very adept at bargaining, Sam. William returned the call. The air was filled with the sound of motorcycles as the shadow wolves positioned themselves. Across the parking lot, Tyler's voice echoed. No escape route, Sage. William faintly grinned. Do you recall my previous discussion of the security feeds, Elizabeth? In response, she pressed a series of buttons on her computer. The video started to be uploaded to a number of encrypted servers. Pete, standing guard, warned that they are approaching. William told them to come. Teams managed by Thompson are well positioned. All we need is for Bishop to come clean. An explosion through. The front glass signaled the start of the attack. The gadget fell into a pail of water and fizzled away unharmed because William was prepared. A clumsy maneuver, he whispered. Shade is becoming less precise. The shadow wolves were the first to charge, attempting to break windows and force their way inside. However, William had also made plans for this. They were sprayed with foam and commotion ensued when the fire suppression system went off. Desert Storm strategies are still fresh in everyone's mind. Then William yelled out. Do the Kuwait hangars ring a bell? At this point, there was an air of doubt in Shade's voice. According to Bishop, you were single. Like in 1991, Bishop is incorrect. Amidst the mayhem, a fresh voice emerged. This is sufficient. From one of the SUVs, Marcus Bishop stepped out. His troops had created a war zone, and his fine suit didn't fit in. There he is, William whispered into a covert microphone. Actually, the man. Curious about the number 91. Bishop yelled out. We should have a conversation. Those files you mentioned earlier. Is this the proof? Tonight, it's all going down in flames. As part of your entire organization, William inquired. This is where you're going to transport those guns. What about the drugs? All that money laundering? You have amassed quite the empire through treachery. Acquiring illicit gains. The bishop let out a laugh. The men were given purpose by me. I assigned them a task while the government ignored them. You transformed them into lawbreakers. Put their expertise to use in your personal conflict. War. Bishop spoke with a higher pitch. Should we discuss the conflict? How does Sandstorm work? Any news on the vanishing weaponry? What happened to the supplies? Who needs other sources when you have your priceless files? Under the cover of night, William grinned. At last, Elizabeth got it. To make Bishop incriminate himself in front of a plethora of witnesses, he had lured him brilliantly. Quietly, William spoke. In my opinion, you just did. All directions were illuminated by floodlights. Secret Service agents came out of hiding. All hands on deck. Through a megaphone, Agent Ramirez's voice resounded. You are encircled, Marcus Bishop. We have several recordings of your confession. It was nearly worth it to break the glass only to see Bishop's expression of awareness. A light bulb went out, and he explained that you'd never had any files. According to William, they weren't necessary. Your admission of your actions, both past and present, was all that was required. Shade attempted to muster his forces for combat as the FBI closed in. However, their opinions were altered upon witnessing the arrival of military police vehicles. Gradually, Bishop's dominion started to fall apart. The evening was far from done. The community would be rocked by revelations, arrests, and opposition. William Hunter couldn't help but smile as he watched Bishop escorted away in handcuffs. It was sometimes better to let your enemy lose to himself in order to win the fight. The normally peaceful gas station became a flashpoint for police operations after the raid. Military police collected evidence as FBI agents processed gang members who had been captured. As William and Elizabeth stood by, William observed the FBI interrogating Bishop in the rear of the truck. You were plotting this the whole time, Elizabeth remarked. Not quite, but the moment those shadow wolves appeared, I saw an opportunity. Sure, some patterns are timeless. Agent Ramirez drew near, drawing her weapon from its sheath. We have spent months gathering evidence against Bishop, but no one has ever been able to link him to the events during Desert Storm, Mr. Hunter. William explained that this was due to the fact that you were seeking proof that was non-existent. His guilt and paranoia regarding those ancient files were the true evidence. His confession and proof of his ongoing operation are now at our disposal. That was a smile on Ramirez's face. We discovered enough weapons and cash in his warehouse to equip a small army. The cuffed figure of Shade was being escorted past. With an air of respectful resignation, he averted his gaze from William. You deceived us. As a group. We, Spectre. Bishop deceived you. He was exposed for what he truly was by me. As federal authorities processed Tyler and the Shadow Wolves, they sat in a line. They seemed mostly young and disoriented. Veterans who'd been tricked into joining Bishop's organization. What becomes of them? Asking with a nod toward the younger gang members, Elizabeth spoke up. They'll get an opportunity to rectify the situation. Yes, Ramirez said. There was a lot of manipulation and coercion among them. To provide options, we are collaborating with veteran services. As Thompson joined them, the FBI agents gave him suspicious looks due to his CIA credentials. Something intriguing was discovered in Bishop's office, Hunter. Case files pertaining to different operations and different cities. It wasn't limited to the area. William firmly disagreed. As a front for the transfer of firearms and drugs, Bishop was constructing a network using seasoned bike gangs. Most likely uses the same settings all around the nation. According to Ramirez, this is merely the start. Your assistance in deciphering his remaining network will be invaluable. Military bases missing weaponry, Thompson pondered. Drug routes through seemingly innocent enterprises. Bishop had set up an entire underground network. They were distracted by a noise. Handcuffed, Officer Martinez was brought away. Even in his police uniform, the pervasive corruption was plain to see. Just how many more? Elizabeth, could you please ask? Which ones are remaining? That's the truth that will emerge. Yes, Ramirez said. I was hoping that you, Mr. Hunter, could be open to providing some advice on the broader inquiry. William saw as additional evidence was extracted from Bishop's vehicles. Mobile phones, papers, and laptops. As a requirement, the young veterans that Bishop enlisted must receive assistance rather than merely incarceration. It was all planned, Thompson told him. Now the military is getting involved. They are quite good at looking for their own. Fresh coffee for the police squads was carried by Pete as he came out of the station. Location is in disarray, yet the building is stable. We should be able to reopen in a couple of days. Sooner rather than later, Ramirez stated. We'll enlist teams to assist with the repairs. Protective measures will be in place for this station for some time. His network is still active, even while Bishop is down. Following news reports of the raid, Lisa showed up. Incredulous, she gazed at the scene. This is all because a few of motorcyclists dared to stir up trouble. No, William told her. This is all because the public united in their opposition to corruption. Fear and intimidation were the cornerstones of Bishop's kingdom. It would inevitably fall apart the moment someone challenged him. A high-ranking military official got out of a waiting car. William was able to identify the emblem. Military Bureau of Criminal Investigations. He informed Thompson that they would be interested in learning about the missing firearms. Many mysteries are solved by Bishop's procedure. According to Thompson, it also brings up fresh inquiries. I wonder how many other bishops are utilizing the cover of seasoned gangs. While additional evidence was being transported into FBI trucks, Elizabeth observed. When will it really end? For this section, William gave her his word. The Benedictors concluded their remarks. We still have a ways to go before we can say goodbye to his organization. Are you proposing to lend a hand? As William clutched his Purple Heart pin, thoughts of the veteran's bishop had taken advantage of flooded his mind. We must find a way. Becoming puppets in Bishop's private war was not the right fate for these young veterans. At the Ravens Hollow gas station, the sun was rising, signaling the conclusion of the longest night in its recorded history. As William observed federal officials taking notes on evidence and processing detainees, he realized that this was actually only the first step. Other operations would be revealed to them through Bishop's network. Various cities where veterans were being taken advantage of. A countrywide probe began with the seemingly innocuous petrol station. Even the final war hero, William Hunter, had battles left to fight. The Ravens Hollow gas station reopened 3 days subsequent to the incident. Damaged windows were changed out for new ones. Minor alterations persisted after the bullet holes were filled. Military police frequently drove by on patrol, and FBI surveillance trucks kept a low profile. While Elizabeth oversaw a crew of contractors installing new and improved security systems, William sat at the bar and watched. At this point, the station had taken on symbolic importance. This is the spot where Bishop's kingdom started to crumble. Most recent analysis by Thompson. William was joined by Ramirez, who slid onto the stool. There are 3 other states where we have found such enterprises. Gangs of seasoned motorcyclists, strategically placed petrol stations, and crooked police officers. Bishop's outline, William gave a subtle nod. Each franchise business, which he was constructing, was autonomous but interdependent. 12 further corrupt law enforcement officials have been apprehended by us. Ramirez went on to say. Martinez is in the middle of negotiating a contract. Little did anyone anticipate how pervasive the corruption would be. Behind the station, a collection of impounded Shadow Wolves motorcycles lay, their chrome worn down by forensics powder. Some of the younger members of Tyler's group were released to veteran support programs, but the majority of them were in federal custody. Elizabeth brought up the fact that one of the younger cyclists had dropped by earlier to join them. I believe Tommy wanted to express his apologies. According to William, those youngsters aren't bad. I just lost. Bishop was well versed in doing just that. As Pete hurried in, clutching a newspaper, the bell rang. You should view this. Prosecutors are speaking with Bishop. Crime lord exposes vast system of veteran exploitation, the headline stated. William thought it was a brilliant move. He plans to expose his accomplices in an effort to negotiate a reduced sentence. What's more, Ramirez chimed in. We discovered proof of weapon transfers to foreign war zones. More than merely a criminal enterprise was under Bishop's control. A secret guns trade was something he was running. Similar revelations had resulted from questioning Shades. The ex-operator of Delta Force has divulged information regarding radicalization and recruitment centers for veterans. According to William, they went after the weak. Disoriented and ill-prepared for civilian life, veterans report feeling ignored by the government. The bishop promised them a sense of belonging, camaraderie, and regular income. According to Ramirez, it was like a terrorist cell. Very much so. Because of their familiarity with military structure, he utilized it. Turned their training against them. Fresh coffee was brought over by Lisa. She was adamant about getting back to work, refusing to allow her fear disrupt her daily schedule. There are more reporters outside, she said. Reports regarding the raid are sought after. Take their time. Strictly speaking, Elizabeth stated. We're not in this for the limelight. The CIA guy raced inside as soon as Thompson's vehicle came up outside. Hey Hunter, we're making progress. Other states' associates of Bishop are becoming increasingly anxious. Evidence is being attempted to be destroyed. That was done too late. Under his breath, William wore a smile. The entire system was doomed to collapse the moment Bishop began speaking. Teams are advancing on targets in Nevada, Florida, and Texas. It was also mentioned by Ramirez. Coordinated attacks, similar to this one. William then inquired about the veterans. Those that Bishop enlisted. Cooperation is being displayed by the majority. He was reassured by Thompson. In return for their information, they are being offered deals. Reformation rather than incarceration. The new security cameras installed at the station were silently humming as they monitored any activity outside. In an effort to forestall any potential dangers in the future, Elizabeth had set up a cutting-edge system. Tomorrow is Bishop's preliminary hearing, according to Ramirez. He is facing charges ranging from international arms trafficking to violations of the RICO Act. William foretold that he would attempt to negotiate a fee. In return for mercy, he should offer up his entire network. Allow him, Thompson said. Each of the names he provides us with points to a different operation that we can halt. Rumbling by the station on its way to Bishop's warehouse was a military convoy. There was still a lot of cash and weaponry that needed cataloging. Elizabeth spoke with some contemplation. I first assumed those bikes were just some troublemakers from the neighborhood. I had no idea that would cause so much trouble. According to William, that is the way these operations function. Using seemingly innocent companies as a front, they remain undetected. However, untie one thread. Things start to fall apart. In the end, Ramirez was victorious. After Pete checked the pumps, he came back. The military police claimed to have discovered further firearms. Some of those Shadow Scorpion motorcycles have secret compartments. Bishop considered every possible aspect. Thompson reflected. Mobilizing transportation via motorcyclists. Gas stations as distribution hubs. On a dark note, it was brilliant. One error, though, did he make. "William," he whispered. The fact that not all veterans are tradable slipped his mind. "We battled for something, and some of us still remember it." The dawn light illuminated the purple heart pin that he wore on his collar. An enduring symbol of the ideals supported and the sacrifices made. Additional news vans parked outside. Life, however, went on as usual within the station. Despite their victory, William was aware that the conflict was far from ended. A bigger hydra had several heads, and Bishop's network was only one of them. However, for the time being, it was sufficient to witness the revival of Elizabeth Station and Lisa's fearless service of coffee. There were times when small victories were enough. On occasion, it involved modest booths at peaceful gas stations where regular people would not be frightened. On occasion, the final hero of the conflict was the one who was most required to bring the cause of the fight back to the forefront. The preliminary hearing before Bishop was broadcast nationally. As William Hunter took the stand as a witness, the courtroom was filled with reporters, federal investigators, and inquisitive spectators. His presence, even in this formal atmosphere, demanded attention, and he wore his Purple Heart pin prominently. Federal Prosecutor Mr. Hunter, I would like you to describe the circumstances surrounding your initial knowledge of Mr. Bishop's illicit organization. With a firm voice, Williams said that it began with intimidation at his neighborhood gas station. However, their methods were of a military caliber, far too sophisticated for typical gang operations. Observing Bishop's expression, Elizabeth sat in the gallery and listened to William recount the happenings. Even though he kept up his military demeanor, the former colonel's uneasiness was visible in his eyes. "And these strategies are familiar to you?" a prosecutor inquired. William verified via way of Desert Storm. Back then, Bishop did the same thing, he took advantage of the military for his own benefit. But now he had grown, relying on his army of veterans rather than supplies. The judge disregarded the objection raised by Bishop's attorney. There was an indisputable relevance to the link between the past and the present. The prosecutor went on to ask what happened during the raid's nighttime. William detailed the well-coordinated assault on the station and the military tactics used by Bishop's soldiers. The usual method for a clandestine operation was to try to block communications and disrupt electricity. On top of that, Mr. Bishop was there. Just when he believed he was winning, he came clean and admitted everything. Everything from arms trafficking to exploiting veterans to his actions during Desert Storm. The whole extent of his outmaneuverment hit Bishop, and he shifted in his seat. Agent Ramirez briefed William on the larger probe at lunch. Texas teams have recently stormed 3 other places. Corruption at the municipal level, seasoned gangs, strategically placed gas stations, the same old story. Bishop's outline, William gave a subtle nod. How many service members served? In a number of different states, hundreds. The majority of them were enlisted subsequent to their release from the military. Any place where they could find veterans in need, including VA hospitals and support groups, were targets for Bishop's men. Carrying secret documents, Thompson accompanied them. Bishop's operation has been associated with armed shipments in 6 different nations. He was providing weapons to extremist groups abroad in addition to street gangs. Terrorists are being armed by veterans, William whispered. Betrayal at its most heinous. Once again, Bishop's attorney attempted to cast his client in a patriotic light in the courtroom. Forgotten soldiers found work and meaning through Mr. Bishop. What makes that wrong? William retaliated by making them criminals. During his personal conflict, he exploited their experience and training. Veterans are being exploited, not helped. The next witness was a shade. His militaristic demeanor stood in sharp contrast to his jail uniform. In it, he outlined the ways in which Bishop found and nurtured veterans who were particularly susceptible to abuse. What the system lacked, we provided for them. Shade came clean. A close relationship. Good salary. There was a cost, though. They are honest. Their dignity. The next witness was Tyler. Without his gang colors, the youthful leader of the Shadow Wolves appears bewildered. I was located in the VA hospital by Bishop's men. They boasted of a program that assisted veterans in making the adjustment to civilian life. Till we were in over our heads, we never once brought up the fact that it was illegal. Seeing the effect of the proceedings on William, Elizabeth took another break. For you, this is deeply personal, isn't it? What we fought for is symbolized by every veteran Bishop corrupted. William, the man responded. Plus, what he sold out. Pete showed up bearing station news. Even more young veterinarians are turning up. News of the assistance initiatives that Ramirez established quickly circulated. They would like to be removed from Bishop's group. Excellent, William remarked. I mean, that's the meat of the matter. Providing them with an opportunity to regain their dignity. The prosecution offered proof of Bishop's involvement in the weapons operation. Boxes of military equipment discovered in his storage facilities. Illegal arms sales totaling millions of dollars revealed in financial records. Photos captured by surveillance cameras of transactions with organizations known to be involved in terrorist activities. A criminal empire wasn't all Bishop accomplished. Case closed, prosecutor. He formed an underground army by recruiting American veterans to serve as his personal guard. During the afternoon session, Lisa had joined Elizabeth to observe the proceedings. The fact that it all began at our station is unbelievable to me. Under her breath, she murmured. The tiniest details can sometimes be the catalyst for most significant shifts. Okay, Elizabeth said. Towards the end of the day, Bishop abandoned his military posture at last. He chose to disregard his lawyer's concerns and addressed the court directly. All of my actions, it is declared, he said, belong to the veterans. In other words, the system forsook them. I provided them motivation. You bound them. William stepped in, getting the judge to issue a sanction. Their trust in you becomes a bond of servitude. Damage had already been done when the judge issued an order. His real character had been exposed by Bishop's tantrum. Someone who preyed on defenseless veterans, not a patriot, but a manipulator. Reporters flocked to the courthouses outside for interviews. Although Ramirez made a brief remark, William chose not to be interviewed. Not the finish, but the beginning is happening today. Her announcement was made. Bishop has connections all around the nation. There will be no respite for exploited veterans until we have shut down all operations. Later that night, William, Elizabeth, Pete, and Lisa gathered at the gas station to watch the hearing on television. This is how Bishop views life. They said Thompson had joined them. The evidence is too much for his attorneys to ignore. Can you tell me about the other procedures? Elizabeth, could you please ask? Declining in a domino effect, Ramirez chimed in. Bringing new information with them. The associates of Bishop are frantically trying to escape with their lives. Meanwhile, some are trying to get away while others are turning evidence. The war heroes, though? William inquired. He remains primarily concerned. We have rehabilitation programs set up. He was reassured by Thompson. They are now receiving actual assistance and opportunity thanks to the military's involvement. While the streets were deserted, the new security cameras installed at the station beeped softly. There were no longer any shadow wolves. The FBI and military police are currently patrolling their turf. In asking a single inquiry, Lisa expressed a universal curiosity. If you knew, how On the very first day, when they arrived? This is what you ended up with. How did you anticipate that? William, thinking, reached out and felt his Purple Heart pin. I honed my pattern recognition skills in Vietnam. How Bishop handled his business, relying on distribution networks built up by veterans. It lacked the disarray of typical gang behavior. Something greater, something terrible, was being constructed by him. A personal army, Pete remarked. Using wayward men, William nodded. But Bishop neglected to include one detail. Honor and oath are things that true soldiers never lose sight of. Elizabeth completed the task once they discovered an exit. As darkness descended upon the Ravens Hollow gas station, it started its role in bringing Bishop's empire tumbling down. The number of veterans seeking aid would increase. There would be more operations revealed. The number of conflicts would increase. William Hunter, the last living war hero, allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction as he watched the TV coverage with his strange band of supporters. Even a little win can begin with a silent gas station stand. Where regular folks would not be frightened. They had won a significant battle tonight, but the war was far from over. Every veteran whom Bishop had misled would continue to be fought for the following day. As a result of the media craze surrounding Bishop's trial, the Ravens Hollow gas station received more attention than intended. There was a press tent outside in the hopes that they may interview William or Elizabeth. Other guests, though, were also present. Former members of such groups who had heard of the assistance initiatives were trying to find a way out. Elizabeth mentioned seeing a young veteran anxiously making his way to the station earlier today, which was the third one. Each one arrives in the same manner. There was a military bearing beneath the biker leather, and William nodded to acknowledge it. To make sure it's safe, they're doing tests. Underneath his gang patches, the young man entered. He looked around the train station. After much consideration, William's Purple Heart pin was ultimately chosen during combat training. In a low voice, he mentioned that Mike was in Nevada with the raiders while searching for Hunter. Even though William knew the answer, he still wanted to know about Bishop's operation there. After hearing that you were assisting individuals in escaping from petrol stations, Mike nodded in agreement. Agent Ramirez is in charge of that, William said, but you found the correct spot. Ramirez walked in as if summoned. A makeshift office for communicating with veteran services had been put up close by. Noting Mike's patches, she inquired about another one. The Nevada branch was confirmed by Raiders William. We've been keeping tabs on them. Ramirez mentioned that your information might be useful. Uncomfortably, Mike shifted. I am not seeking to be a snitch, I am simply seeking to be one out. I need to put things right because I am expecting a child. You are not being asked to betray anyone. But if you want assistance, you must be forthright about what you know, William told him. Pete provided the brew. He no longer felt threatened by motorcyclists and now he understands them. He told me to take my time on the house. Similar tales like Mike's had been told to them before. Recruitment at a VA hospital was a challenge for a former Marine upon discharge. Good money and brotherhood were promised by the raiders. He felt trapped and that it was too late to go out when he finally understood what he was doing. They were deeply entangled. Get to know your neighbors and the schools your children attend, as Mike put it. Make it plain that you're not going anywhere. In the past, Ramirez made a notation. The outcome was altered by the bishop's detention. His entire network is at risk. Thompson showed up with new information. Raiders are in a state of disarray. In an effort to cover up their actions, leadership has dispersed. Ideal moment to relocate. Did you hear from anyone else who wants out? William spoke to Mike. The older members, who are true believers, are becoming increasingly desperate, whereas the younger guys were enlisted to serve as warriors, not as criminals. In a frenzy, how? Elizabeth, could you please ask? Her voice betrayed her concern. Discussing a final major move as a way to demonstrate their strength. Thompson and William locked eyes. They intend to demonstrate their might. As Thompson said, he continued. Show that they haven't been weakened by Bishop's arrest. Collaboration amongst branches. Mike added, he said. Had been hoarding weaponry. Keeping an eye on the actions of the presidency. Their blow will be severe. Show me an example. Regarding what? Ramirez, he yelled. The gas station caught Mike's eye. From everyone who lends a hand in their downfall. It was easy to see the consequences. A symbol, Raven's Hollow had become. From a position of both strength and weakness. First, we must take action. As Thompson said, he continued. Take out their upper management before they can work together. No. Then William shot back. Let them come, we did. However, we are prepared this time. Wow, that's just astonishing. Something over which Pete was unhappy. Given the events that have transpired. I love it. Suddenly, Ramirez spoke up. Comprehending William's approach. All of their resources will be dedicated to it. Make all of their networks public. And stumble into an ambush. Finally, William was done. Mike observed the conversation. A blossoming of recognition. You accomplished that with Bishop. He reasoned that this gave him the advantage. Choosing the battlefield with your enemy isn't always the best strategy. William elucidated. But you should ensure that it is biased towards you. They worked on the strategy over the following hours. Regarding raider activities, Mike gave specifics. Their strategies. Their areas of concern. Federal teams in 3 different states were coordinated by Thompson. Extra monitoring and assistance were set up by Ramirez. Noon is when they'll show up. According to Mike's prediction. Coordination of assault by multiple teams. The police have scanners. Jamming devices for radio waves. Expert equipment. Similar to the assault by Bishop. Elizabeth recalled. Reason being, it's the identical playbook. Yes, William remarked. Strategies employed by the military. Specialized for use in illicit activities. Which, however, renders them predictable. After sitting silently and listening, Lisa finally spoke out. Is the station still in play? Every one of our regulars. Our business ends at a predetermined hour. That was Elizabeth's decision. Make it appear as though we're terrified. Reducing hours because of threats. Just right. With a nod, Thompson followed suit. Make them feel like they're making progress in the mental battle. William looked over the plans for the station. Denoting important locations. We must work in tandem with the authorities in our area. The truthful ones. Set up federal teams in these 3 places. All approaches must be under our control. How about I? What about me? Mike inquired. I am proud of you. This, Ramirez told him. You will be placed in protective custody by our team. The support program paperwork needs to be started. As night fell, they set out to put the strategy into motion. Notices concerning decreased hours were posted by Elizabeth. Pete made sure the tools and valuables were safe. Teams from the federal government set up covert stations all over the grounds. As the sun dipped below the horizon, William reflected on past conflicts and ambushes. As far as they're concerned, it's an attack plot. He pondered. Actually, they're entering the ritual of their own submission. You seem quite sure of yourself, Elizabeth remarked. I get it. Some men are so intent on projecting an image of strength that they fail to recognize when they are vulnerable. The similar error was committed by Bishop. As the sun set, the station was silent. However, scores of federal agents lurked in the dark. In order to follow the raiders' whereabouts across 3 states, surveillance teams kept an eye on their conversations. I had everything ready. While they were doing final checks, Elizabeth had one question. What if they back out? They were all too familiar with William's habit of touching his Purple Heart pin. It will happen. These types of men just can't help themselves. They aren't the type to back down from a challenge because of their pride. For what reason will they do it, Lisa wanted to know. And then we will complete what began here. Every group that takes advantage of veterans, not alone Bishop's empire. A little stand can sometimes spark a larger movement for change. A dense air of expectation pervaded the night as it descended upon the Ravens Hollow petrol station. They heard motorbikes off in the distance. Not coming close, but amassing. As expected, the raiders were on their way. However, the previous hero of battle wasn't merely protecting a petrol station on this occasion. This had been a lifelong goal of his, and he was finally succeeding. Honoring fallen soldiers by providing them with a second opportunity. And there, in the depths of night, was salvation. Like a storm brewing, midnight drew near the Ravens Hollow gas station. William Hunter observed the gathering of invaders at several staging areas through the security feeds as he stood by the window. They were quite well coordinated. Punishment for criminal acts with the same military precision. 3 factions, according to Thompson, were keeping tabs on radio transmissions. Each group has 20 bikes, with trucks to back them up. They're utilizing night vision while sprinting in the dark. Exactly as anticipated. I nodded, William. Military strategy, expert equipment. Their approach is that of a military operation. Team positions were double-checked by Ramirez. With the help of tactical troops and military police, federal agents were concealed all over the place. However, the raiders were unaware of that. Darkened and seemingly defenseless, all they could make out was a gas station. Mike has good information. Ramirez assured me. They're doing it just like Bishop said. Communication jamming follows power outages. For how many hours? While verifying the backup generators, Elizabeth inquired. William guessed 10 minutes. With the exception of minimal security, they will wait for their reconnaissance team to verify that the station is vacant. As Pete watched the tactical display for blips, he kept an eye on their new security system. They've encircled our location. Is that 3? No. There are 4 levels. According to William, that's the standard infiltration pattern. Command element, support units, strike teams, and outer containment. They were well taught by Bishop. Lisa, who had refused to leave despite widespread disapproval, now watched the approaching enemies with increasing anxiety. It's overwhelming. William reassured her that the numbers were irrelevant. They're employing strategies that we've already defeated in the past conflict. Predictions were spot on as the first part got underway. After the street lights went out, the power eventually made it to the nearby buildings. However, essential systems were kept running thanks to the station's new generators, which effortlessly kicked in. The communications are going down, Thompson said. Their electronic aggression has begun. William told them to make them believe it's working. A backup frequency was quickly adopted by everybody. Then the raiders showed up on the outskirts. Moving with military accuracy, figures clothed in black. They made a textbook advance. Worked in tandem to secure approaches and set up fire fields. When questioned about their effectiveness, Ramirez conceded while using night vision lenses. They're easy to foresee, William said. Can you see how they're zeroing in on the most common entrances? Totally ignoring the subterranean fuel tank access that we adapted. Observing the raiders' deployment, Elizabeth recalled how Bishop's forces had erred in a similar manner. They believe they have command. William, filled with pride, gave a little nod. Forces them to disregard the fundamental principle of warfare. Always have an open mind about your opponent's potential weaknesses. The raiders' command vehicle, a tactical truck with certain modifications that would have fit right in at a battlefield, showed up. Colonel Jackson, who led them, had previously been Bishop's adversary before to his detention. At this point, he was attempting to reassert command over the disorganized group. According to Thompson, Jackson is here in person. It's novel. William clarified that this is about more than simply us. Power is at the heart of the matter. He has to demonstrate his ability to handle opposition if he wants Bishop's position. The precise assault by the raiders commenced. Smoke grenades were placed near doorways, and flashbangs were thrown at windows. Yet, the updated security measures at the petrol station immediately rendered any threats ineffective. They have no idea they're firing blanks. That was a smile on Ramirez's face. Every strike lands just where we desire. As William observed Jackson coordinating his soldiers, flashbacks of comparable actions from his military service came flooding back. He's adhering to the usual attack procedures. 3 minutes remain until they break in. Thompson verified that federal teams are prepared. Hold on a second. Boots hushed on the pavement, the raiders' main force advanced. Wearing night vision goggles boosted their self-assurance in the pitch black. However, the infrared strobes that could blind their equipment at will were invisible to them. Now what? Elizabeth gestured towards the controls of the defense system and inquired. Remain calm, William warned. Allow them to go all in. We require Jackson to remain within our boundaries. Upon reaching the station doors, the initial raiders proceeded to file charges for breaching. Some others set up sniper positions, oblivious to the fact that government marksmen were observing them. He updated 2 minutes later. Teams have been notified that they are prepared. As a subtle sign of reverence for the impending event, William delicately touched his Purple Heart pin. No, these guys weren't bad. The soldiers had become disoriented and had forgotten their original mission. Remember, these are veterans, he reminded the federal squads. They ought to be given an opportunity to capitulate honorably. Their intercepted conversations picked up crackles in Jackson's voice. Each unit carries out its mission. The raiders surged forward as a unit, evading charges that were going off. But the plans never came to fruition. They lost the ability to see in the dark. Every entrance was marked as a potential kill zone, and smoke grenades were released in a non-lethal manner. William gave the order. Beams of light shone from concealed locations. The raiders were encircled by an overwhelming force as federal squads emerged from hiding. The voice of Ramirez booming over the high-quality speakers reached Colonel Jackson. Your army is encircled. Every possible method is addressed. Given right this second. The raiders' nefarious motive clashed with their military training, causing them to freeze. Even as some brandished their weapons, Jackson's voice averted their path. Realizing the pointlessness of continuing to resist, he gave the order to stand down. As William stepped outside, the artificial light caught the Purple Heart. Excuse me, Colonel. You have been anticipated. With a look that was equal parts wrath and reverence, Jackson stepped out of his command truck. Hunter ought to have been aware. Your methods from the Vietnam War are evident in every aspect of this. But I always knew what the uniform meant, so that's the difference. You did, William said. William walked up to Jackson as federal agents surrounded the area, seizing firearms and suspects. A bishop's pardon is the treatment your guys get. They assist us in ceasing these activities. There is genuine help and opportunities for them to start over. Plus, you'll be on your own to deal with the fallout if we don't. Thanks, Colonel. Persist in taking lives or assist us in rescuing them. The following hour was devoted to processing the raiders, securing their weapons, and collecting evidence. The offer of help was quickly taken up by many of the younger members, who were eager to break free from the criminal lifestyle. Former adversaries become cooperating witnesses as Elizabeth observed from the station door. Is this the final straw? William, she inquired. That chapter, absolutely. However, there are additional groups and veterans who have gone astray and might use some assistance getting back on track. Will you persist in your struggle? William faintly grinned. We must find a way. Every veteran should be given the opportunity to honor their service. With the onset of daylight, the Ravens Hollow gas station had transformed into more than just a site of combat. As a haven for stranded troops, it was taking on the meaning of a symbol of salvation. It was far from over for the last military hero. But this evening, a number of veterans had made their way back to the light. A tiny purple heart pin gleamed in the early light, serving as a poignant reminder that kindness and understanding are more effective than force in winning some fights. Additional difficulties arose the following morning following the raiders' capitulation. Military police worked in tandem with veteran services as federal agents analyzed evidence. The Ravens Hollow gas station had evolved into the nerve center of a 5-state organization. Reporting the final tally, Rami. Rez examined the information on her laptop. Colonel Jackson and 47 other raiders are in police custody. The number of individuals that have consented to collaborate is 32. Where are the weapons? Thompson inquired. More than enough to clothe a little army. Equipment of a military nature, including parts sourced directly from operational bases. Beyond Bishop or Jackson, this is more profound. Photos of evidence were scattered about Elizabeth's desk, and William scrutinized them. Serial numbers like this come from shipments that were made recently. The theft of military materials is ongoing. Elizabeth, who had brought fresh coffee, speculated that this would explain Jackson's rapid actions. He wasn't merely attempting to demonstrate his prowess. To keep his supply chain intact, he had to act. With additional news, Pete came in. Another trio of veterans has just arrived. Who are seeking to turn themselves in. Ex-raiders from different chapters. Law enforcement had turned the station's parking lot into a staging area. On one side, you could see impounded motorbikes, and on the other, you could see government trucks. Agents and formerly incarcerated gang members were among Lisa's customers at the coffee counter. As Thompson laid out the documents, he announced that he had found something intriguing in Jackson's files. Dialogue with a senior official. Department of Military Procurement. The papers were inspected by William. Field Marshal Howard Phillips. Names like that are familiar to me. It would be smart of you. Ramirez assured me. He serves as the Undersecretary for Military Logistics. Manages the distribution of equipment for 3 different branches. Ideally situated to redirect resources. William pondered. They acted as intermediaries, Bishop and Jackson. Phillips is the authentic report. William was approached by a young raider who was just out of his teens. Excuse me. You brought up the topic of honor, and several of us were discussing it. Keep going. William bolstered morale. A little bit about Phillips and the supply chain is what we know. Many of us joined with the intention of assisting our fellow veterinarians. We knowingly armed terrorists. I had no idea. Agent Ramirez needs to know everything. That was William's opinion. Assist us in putting a full end to this. More details became clear as the young man conversed with Ramirez. Phillips has been enlisting the help of dishonest VA personnel in his recruitment efforts. There was a bigger enterprise, of which the motorcycle gangs were a component. He dispersed guns through Bishop and Jackson, Thompson realized. Sales on a global scale, however, generated the bulk of revenue. Cover is flawless. I nodded, William. Vets assisting other vets. Motorcycling groups that host charity rides go unnoticed. While some ex-raiders were chatting with military police, Elizabeth observed another group of them. What is the total number of organizations in the world? Way too many. William, the man responded. Through the use of military precision, Phillips established illegal enterprises and expanded his network across the country. But for what reason? While on break, Lisa joined them and requested. A general by then, he was. Grief, Thompson said. Millions of dollars were stashed away in offshore accounts. Power. That was William's mistake. Phillips is deeply committed to his cause and views the veterans he has helped empower as his own army. Ramirez came back with new information. The speaker is Jackson. The author claims that Phillips is plotting a major show of force. On what date? It was William who made the demand. As he quickly discovers that his network is vulnerable, he feels compelled to demonstrate his resilience in the face of impending disaster. Several automobiles were detected approaching the station by the sound of the security system's beeps. They weren't threats, though. More and more veterans were showing up to surrender. As William eventually saw through Phillips's plan, he noticed that they were picking sides. Before Phillips may destroy evidence, we need to move quickly, Thompson emphasized. William firmly stated no. Being astute is essential. For Phillips, it's all about taking a hard line, using military strategies on other military installations. What about the other option? William faintly grinned. Similar to Bishop and Jackson, we allow him to believe he is victorious. Men get careless due of their pride. It was very clear to Elizabeth. Conquer him by employing his own strategies. Armed with pinpoint accuracy, Phillips expanded his empire. That makes him easy to anticipate. As the day progressed, additional veterans showed up. There were members of many groups, including raiders. We were all lured in with the promise of a greater good, but ultimately fell victim to deception and exploitation. William suggested that Ramirez establish a processing center. Phillips may be able to use any veteran who surrenders as a witness. It was done, she said. Joint efforts between military police and VA services are underway. At last, some assistance. An immediate call came to Thompson's cell. Phillips has begun document transfer and account clearance in preparation for their move. Absolutely, William remarked. In the event of an emergency, he is acting in accordance with established protocol. In what ways is that ideal? Pete, the questioner inquired. Because his next move is now crystal clear. Those who have studied military theory for a long time will find it predictable. More than just a battleground, the station has transformed. A place where soldiers may find forgiveness and regain their honor, it was becoming a symbol of that. With each newcomer, Phillips' organization was progressively undermined. As William informed Elizabeth, we're up against more than simply a criminal organization. Every tainted veteran's soul is at stake in this battle for redemption. Not to mention Phillips. She inquired. He'll be there. Men with his level of aggression are impossible to subdue. His people are turning, and he will have to take action when he discovers it. William rounded together their most important friends as night fell. The following step would necessitate flawless coordination, utilizing Phillips' own strategies in opposition to him. According to William, he believes he is engaged in a conventional war. However, his true woe is more straightforward. The whole significance of the uniform slipped his mind. His purple heart pin, worn as a symbol of honor and the sacrifices made, shimmered in the waning light. Veteran after veteran arrived, opting for redemption rather than corruption. Destruction of a criminal empire was no longer the only objective. It was all about rescuing disoriented troops and reawakening their sense of mission. In the midst of all this betrayal, a general who had previously stood for everything was about to realize that not every conflict can be won by strategy and weaponry. The strength of knowing one's own truth can be overwhelming at times. From his office in the Pentagon, General Howard Phillips watched as his empire fell apart via encrypted video feeds. According to reports from bases around the nation, veterans have been turning themselves in, which has led to the discovery of weapons caches and distribution networks. There was a breach of 40% of our network, according to his aide. The organizations of Bishop and Jackson have been entirely demolished, and new chapters are appearing every hour. While William Hunter was standing at the Ravens Hollow gas station chatting with ex-raiders, Phillips reviewed the film. "The elderly man," he whispered. "Decades of effort are overturned by the actions of a single spy from the Vietnam War. We must commence final protocols, sir. Proof, erasure, money transfers." Phillips cut in with a nod. Such is what Hunter anticipates. He is overly familiar with military protocol. "After that, what should we do, sir?" Coldly, Phillips grinned. "Wherever we go, he won't anticipate it. Strike him where he is defenseless." While William was at the gas station, Thompson gave him some critical information. "Phillips has moved, but it's not in the way we thought. There is no proof, no erasure, and no money changing hands." The reason William nodded was because he is aware that we will be keeping an eye out for it. He is adjusting. According to Ramirez, there are several vehicles that are departing military bases and scanning the monitoring feeds. The removal of employees and their belongings without authorization. Then it hit William, he's amassing a force. Choosing not to run. Taking aim. Elizabeth listened in on the conversation. Following the events involving Bishop and Jackson. "Not in this place," William clarified. "A general's mind is like Phillips's. Infrastructure and supply lines will be his targets." Thompson cut us off, saying, "Where are we processing his former soldiers?" in reference to the veteran assistance facilities. "Very much so. Get to the trouble spots. Make his betrayers see what happens to them." Alarms began to ring on Ramirez's phone. Unusual behavior has been detected at 3 different centers. Men in uniform and vehicles used by the military. He's attempting to block the flow of defectors, according to William. Reassure and calm down the veterans. In order to safeguard the centers, we must relocate our forces. Please, Thompson reiterated. William retorted negatively. He anticipates that. Strategic planning. Shield the weak spots. So what happens next? William faintly grinned. Allowing him to believe it's effective, we proceeded. As we strike at the heart of his true defenses. Which one is it? Elizabeth, could you please ask? His status. Everything that Phillips accomplished was based on his reputation as a patriotic general who helped veterans. Therein is his true weak spot. For the following hour, they watched as Phillips's forces assembled. Former Special Forces operators. Corrupt military police. Hired guns. Everyone is getting ready to strike at the same time. We have 4 main goals. That was reported by Ramirez. Facilities for assistance in large urban areas. Timeless shock and autopsy strategies. As we're preoccupied with protecting them. This was pointed out by William. Phillips is going to wipe up his actual proof. Pentagon files. Financial records. Record of conversations. Let him hit the center field, then. Pete, the questioner inquired. Absolutely horrified. No. They have already been evacuated. All veterans are secure. All evidence collected. Empty buildings are going to be attacked by Phillips' men. It was clear to Thompson. Even though his own workplace is at risk. Very much so. He fought in the last war as a general. As if we were to respond like fighting warriors. As Phillips's forces advanced into position, Elizabeth observed the tactical displays. It all started when a group of motorcyclists caused chaos at a petrol station. Even little modifications can lead to tremendous results. William, the man responded. Proving to others that resistance is possible, even in a single act of defiance. Reports from Lisa's observations of radio traffic were presented. Their attacks have begun. Vehicles used by the military. Men in uniform. In search of vacant structures. Finally, William was done. Moreover, They were advertising their presence to all nearby law enforcement agencies. The phone of Ramirez went off. Security at the Pentagon is reacting. 3 separate commanders have recently flagged Phillips's unlawful mobilization. He is exposed by his own strategies. William elucidated. Patterns are left behind by military precision. Evidence is created by patterns. It was confirmed by Thompson's contacts. Chiefs of staff are on the move. Phillips's workplace is under lockdown. Every one of his documents. And every one of his documents. Everything he believed he could safeguard by diverting our attention. I nodded, William. A series of events unfolded over the next hours. At deserted command posts, Phillips's armies were encircled. Files and laptops were confiscated by investigators from the Pentagon. Under official inspection, the general's meticulously built veneer shattered. He is fleeing. After Phillips's car departed Washington, Ramirez made an announcement about following it. Traveling westward along rural roads. Permit him. Quietly, William spoke. With every step he takes, he moves farther away from his stronghold. Refrain from intervening. Elizabeth, could you please ask? He has ceased his actions. A commander without of troops. Lacking necessary means. In the absence of formal authority. He was found guilty by his own acts. More and more reports came in. Worldwide accounts held by Phillips frozen. His connections in the military are being probed. He spent decades developing a network, but everything fell apart in a matter of hours. He is attempting to contact his remaining faithful operatives. This was reported by Thompson. Struggling to coordinate a form of opposition. However, his words are reaching individuals who are already detained. This was pointed out by William. New proof is uncovered with each response. As dusk descended, the petrol station in Ravens Hollow stayed silent. The processing center for veterans ran efficiently, providing assistance to individuals who have left gangs in their search for legal support services. Through deception and instilling terror, Phillips believed he could exert control over the veterans. William informed Elizabeth. What motivates troops, he had forgotten. Duty. Having a strong urge to contribute to a cause bigger than oneself. Their memory has returned. Turning himself in is mandatory for every veteran. If any operator wants to fix problems, they can. Phillips attempted to take what they rightfully belonged to them. As night fell, the light reflected off the Purple Heart pin. A helpful reminder that sometimes strategy and weaponry aren't necessary to win. Sometimes all it takes to win a war is to lead people back to their original intent. Someone would find out about Phillips in due time. The ruins of his kingdom laid bare. However, we had already achieved true victory. For the veterans who look back with pride on their service. Deciding for salvation instead of corruption. In the beginning, there was just a stand. In the calm of a gas station. The story of an elderly fighter who showed others that standing up for what's right is never too late. A month subsequent to the breakdown of Phillips's network. A unique type of gathering was held at the Ravens Hollow gas station. Veterans from across the country. Who were formerly raiders. Former gang members who have turned their lives around. Including those who had managed to avoid being influenced by Phillips. All came together to celebrate their fresh starts. Complete sums. William received word from Ramirez. Perched behind the counter, observing the throng. 812 service members enrolled in healing programs. 300 million in assets confiscated. Weapons seized from 37 sites in 12 states. Phillips, 2. Elizabeth, could you please ask? Bringing coffee to a gathering of masked ex-raiders. Intercepted while attempting to enter Canada. Thompson made an additional statement. He was betrayed by his own military etiquette. Implemented well-known means of evacuation. Detailed protocols. William observed a young veteran in the parking lot interacting with his children. Not long ago. For Phillips, he had been handling gun sales. He was now starting over with his life. We were wrong about the depth of the weapons relationship. Ramirez went on to say. Dealers in international armaments. The cells of terrorists. Corrupt military contractors. There was much more to Phillips's network than what was shown. However, his fall made everything visible. I nodded, William. Just as when you pull on a single thread, the entire sweater comes undone. Hi, Pete. The reformed gang members now feel at ease with him. Streamlined traffic flow in the bustling parking area. There was more to the station now than just a business. Redeeming power was symbolized by it. The trial of Bishop will begin next week. This was reported by Thompson. In light of both his and Jackson's proof. Multiple life sentences are being considered for Phillips. Lisa came out of the warehouse with party materials in tow. New veterans are showing up. Some from Florida and Texas. It's not as if they're only attending the ceremony. William elucidated. People are gathering to witness evidence that change is achievable. There was strength in the simplicity of the ceremony. Official acknowledgement was given to every veteran for their involvement in the rehabilitation program. Honor and atonement were the themes that the military officials, real ones this time, discussed. One ex-raider informed the audience a year ago. By becoming a member of Phillips' group, I foolishly believed I was assisting veterans. Actually, I'm going to do it today. Counseling those who desire to escape that existence. William was approached by Shade, who was now completely cooperative with the authorities. Did you not know? You could see Phillips' progress on the station from the very first day. The patterns were obvious to me. William, the man responded. I followed the same ones in Vietnam. Changing soldiers into criminals, the role of men. Utilizing their skills for personal conflicts. More cars pulled up, and Elizabeth watched them all. This time, it's family automobiles rather than motorbikes that are transporting veterans and their families. It is hard to believe that a little group of troublemakers on motorcycles started it all. William said that sometimes that's the only thing needed. Someone decides to stand up against bullying for a second. As he spoke to the assembly, the sunlight reflected off the Purple Heart pin that was fastened to his collar. Phillips attempted to take more than simply your abilities and allegiance. As soldiers, he attempted to steal your identities. You take that back today. Ongoing operations were updated by Ramirez. Similar networks in other nations had been revealed by Phillips's arrest. The evidence was being used by international task forces to bring down criminal companies all around the world. Thompson informed Elizabeth that her stations would become well known. A representation of the fight against corruption. Standing up to criminal groups is an example that other communities are trying to emulate. Elizabeth said that they simply did the right thing. William walked us through it. No, William told her. You decided to be one united front. You were merely reminded that it was possible. The sun was setting, and families began to assemble for a communal supper. Sitting together, former rivals shared stories of redemption. There were now children playing where there had been tensions. So, what's the plan? As Lisa beheld the changed parking lot, she inquired. No changes, William said. Other veterans, like Phillips, are being taken advantage of, but they now know there is a way out. The new security cameras installed at the station were reassuring rather than protective as they silently observed. Repaired bullet holes, shattered windows, and other wounds from past conflicts were visible, but they were symbols of victory, not defeat. As Ramirez handed an official document to William, he added one last item. You are being asked by the Joint Task Group to advise on rehabilitation programs, find more networks, and consult. Making a triumphant return. Elizabeth probed farther. While thinking about it, William felt his Purple Heart pin. Never truly departed from it. Wars can drag on for years. They only shift the scene of combat. At the Raven's Hollow petrol station, where terror and violence had previously reigned, a golden light cast a hopeful glow as the sun dipped below the horizon. There was a road back to respect for veterans. O had gotten off track. What started it all was a pair of motorcyclists disturbing the sole remaining war hero at a peaceful gas station. For whatever reason, they felt the need to frighten an elderly man. Rather, they set in motion a series of events that would rescue hundreds of soldiers and bring down criminal empires. Recalling that initial confrontation, William Hunter observed the assembly. The most important thing is not always to win the fights oneself, but rather to demonstrate to others that they can win their own. An enduring symbol of the fact that real bravery has nothing to do with triumphing in battle, the Purple Heart basked in the last of the sun's rays. Regardless of the consequences, it's about doing the right thing. That lesson would be etched in memory even in the midst of a peaceful Raven's Hollow gas station. 2 more noteworthy tales will be shown to you shortly. You should not pass up these opportunities if this one was successful. Take a look at them with a simple click.
Disclaimer. This channel stands against all forms of intolerance, discrimination, racism, and violations of human rights. The stories shared here are original creations, developed to encourage reflection, understanding, and constructive dialogue. All content is produced with a commitment to respecting diversity and honoring human dignity.